For me, it's like playing catch the wave. You put your feet next to the shoreline and you wait for the wave to come to your feet, and then it goes back again, and then it comes back and it covers a bit more of you, and then it withdraws again, and then it comes and it finally engulfs your whole foot, and then you become happy and it kind of grows, and then it just overwhelms you.
Hello, this is Ariane. She's a holistic empowerment worker, amongst other things. I know, I didn't know what it was either. I just thought it sounded cool and I wanted to find out more. And I'm glad I did, because it's great. She's a brilliant woman. I'm having a bit of a weird one this week. Wild, I know, who isn't? But I am particularly special. No, not at all. I just announced that I'm pregnant on social media, which was a weird choice. I got commissioned to make this loop pedal song and I loved it. It's a banger. I don't regret that one bit. It's just, it feels really odd having everyone congratulate you online, inside the internet, and not being able to hug any of them in person, particularly relatives and people who are very far away. I can feel all this joy coming my way, but I can't necessarily connect to it, and my body is changing in ways that I can't really share with others. And that's true of anything that you put out on the internet. Like, obviously, I didn't have to go public with it. Similarly to this podcast, sometimes I feel really connected to the people who are listening and so excited by the experience they're having, but at the same time not really certain if they even are having an experience. It's hard to get a gauge on whether or not people are really connecting with this, or I'm just massively oversharing and burdening others with too much information about my own life. It's that seesaw shame cycle that I can feel swallowing me up sometimes in this isolated moment. If there are other ways that you think would be great to contact the podcast and me, or any of the producers in particular, that don't yet exist, like beyond obviously the Instagram, the Facebook DMs, or the Ko-fi and Patreon pages, let me know. I'd love to make a space where as a community we can come together and talk about our different reactions to different episodes, etc. That would be really amazing. I'd love to cultivate that and make it possible for a little bit more conversation to happen outside these recordings. Obviously, the Ko-fi and Patreons exist. I'm leaning more towards the Ko-fi because I think the Patreon model is tricky. So the Ko-fi, if you want to support the podcast or let me know what you think in a private message there, is ko-fi.com/Helen Duff. But don't worry too much about me. I discovered you get free dental on the NHS, so I went for a filling this week, a couple of days ago. She numbed me right out, and then as I was leaving said, you need to cut down how much sugar you're eating. And I thought, I don't eat that much sugar. I'm not going to let go of my occasional elderflower and daily slice of cake. They are my only pleasures in this moment. Back away from the Bickies bitch and leave the dentures at the door is what I should have said, but my mouth was so numb from the agent she'd injected into the gums, I couldn't express myself in quite such an eloquent and damning manner at that time. I should probably talk a little bit about sex. Look, I keep fantasizing about having sex with other people. My partner's doing the same. I think it's because pregnancy sex is different and not exactly as you imagine it's going to be, even when you're hugely horny. And so your dreams are really the best place to go to get it on. Last night, I was Sandy, or an actor playing Sandy, in Grease, going down on Danny. We were doing some method acting, like rehearsals, except I suddenly realised there were no cameras. We were behind a tree in a kind of fairground setup, and a couple of our co-stars came behind the tree, saw what we were doing. That then made us feel extremely guilty and as if we should confess to our respective partners, which I did when I woke up. I told my boyfriend first thing. It did wonders for his erection. So that's where I'm at. I think Ariane is really good on taking time and listening to yourself and not putting too much pressure on yourself, being really thoughtful when it comes to the relationship you have with your body and the connection between body and mind. So I'm glad we're putting this one out today, and I hope it is helpful, entertaining, a welcome distraction. As ever, you can let us know your thoughts, reactions, all very welcome on the socials, which are tagged in the episode notes. I'm going to put a link to Ariane's workshops too, which she describes at the top of the episode. That's enough from me. Here she is. So when you and I talked about doing this recording, the holistic empowerment worker was one of the things that came up first. Can you explain to me what that term means? Because I think I might love it.
Sure. So it basically means that I use all of my natural, what I term my core gifts. So performance, psychology, resilience training, strategy, all of that stuff. And I infuse it into empowering people to stand tall and strong in their chosen craft. I found there was just this massive lack of support for performers in general in the industry. And when it comes to women of colour and LGBTQ women, you basically get out there in the industry and you fall flat on your face. Because everyone tells you you're going to be super popular because you're exotic, and you know, all of these kind of false assumptions that were fed at drama school or wherever it is that we study, whether it's Italia Conti or Stagecoach or wherever you choose to train. But the lack of support for especially mixed race women, women that don't fit the standard mould in performance, it's just it just really it highlighted, of course, as it does with most solopreneurs. I think it starts on a personal journey. You know, I remember coming out of drama school and I knew that I was lucky to work, but I was only lucky to work because I'd found the right formula for me. And I did that without any outside help at all. So it got to a point where that wore out quite quickly because I needed support. You know, I needed mentorship. I needed opportunities really to grow and learn and feel heard. And none of those things were there. So I decided to go away and set it up for others.
And was the formula that worked for you, because when you first introduced yourself, you were saying you're essentially a multidisciplinary artist. Was it making sure that you did enough different things that you could always be employed, but also always be completely exhausted?
That's a very good point. Yes. So it was part of that, part of understanding that the industry is deeply prejudiced, basically racist, elitist, everything, every ist under the sun, you know, and allowing myself to understand, I think on a really deep level, that there's nothing wrong with me. And that's really where I had to start, because the industry is consistently sending us messages as performer, especially as a marginalised community, you know, whether you're just different because you don't subscribe to the way of doing things that the commercial industry would have you follow, or whether you are from a marginalized community. You know, we're not supported in the same way, and we are made to feel like, well, you're not interesting because you're in the minority.
Or you use the term, you said that at drama school often people are told like your workload's because you're exotic. So in a way you're only interesting because you're in the minority. And if you ever try and stray outside of what that minority might represent from the perspective of the writer or the producer or whoever's casting you, then you won't be cast because you don't fit that face effectively that they're looking for. Do you work with women to essentially come to that same realisation in terms of there's nothing wrong with me, and then once that acceptance has been reached, where do you go from there?
I'm very much into active change and rapid transformation. So when women come to me, if I'm running an intensive day, typically what I look for is creating a breakthrough that then empowers them to go away and do the work for themselves, rather than putting together a program that they come to for 6 months, for example. You know, I can coach people ongoing if that's what they want, but the kind of transformational change I think I'm really good at is just getting people to feel comfortable, nurtured through the teaching, through the nature of the activities that we offer, and also the people. I'm very specific who I bring on. You know, I have a look at my practitioners to see that they have an ear to their community, to see that they basically embody the practice that we're trying to really funnel into all our activities. So it's embodied practice in that way. It's leading from the front, setting the example, and then really infusing that into what we do so that women can walk away feeling like, yeah, okay, I get it now. And then working out what they need.
What does that really look like on a kind of minute-to-minute basis? Because obviously sometimes it all sounds amazing, but it can also sometimes sound completely impenetrable in terms of like embodying the practice and living your values and all that stuff. It sounds beautiful, especially when written across a gorgeous, like, you know, one of those Instagram images. But actually, what does it involve if you came to an intensive?
Well, what we look at really is working from the inside out. There's a real disconnect for actors, especially, or people that are very intellectual, between their bodies and their brains. That our brains get in the way. They like to boss us around. And it's funny because, that's really why you and I have come together today to record this podcast, is about orgasms. And again, the link between the body and the brain there is so important. So what we're looking to do in an intensive is just connect the dots between body and mind a lot more, so that we're in a place where we feel like actually the body is talking to us consistently and quite repetitively. Actually, it's up to us what we do with those messages, and it asks the questions: am I really listening to myself? Am I in response to my own body and my own needs?
So you're really bringing in the body into the practice in a way that it sounds like comes from a place of a lot of us might be disconnected going in. Does that manifest in quite a different and varied way, or is that often quite similar? Like when people come in, the reasons for why they've become separated between body and mind are quite similar in terms of their experiences, the systems that they've been part of?
Yeah, I think life is just one of them. Being kind of kicked and punched in the gut by people that you thought had your back is very, very common. And I think in the industry, it's really difficult in the performance industry, because we feel as though, we're in a situation where basically you go into a job, and for however long that is that you're in that job, these people become your family. They become an extension of your family. And then those relationships can be problematic because there's all sorts of ego issues going on when you're on and off stage. There are often communication styles, differences there. So little frictions. If we're working with women of colour, certainly there's a lot of microaggressions happening, systems that don't really embrace them, even though they say they do. So we're looking at a lot of cumulative hurt that just sits in the body, but we're just kind of putting up with it. And so I think the women that come to my intensives kind of go, actually, there is a lot for me to process here, and I just need to know what those things are, how to address them, and do that in a loving, supporting environment.
I got a baby, hear me, oh gosh, how did that get straight up magic, straight up magic?
I am someone that really has always believed my whole life in the concept of sacred sex. I didn't actually have the words to verbalize it like that at the time, but it's actually what I was doing. And it just came from this deep-seated belief. Don't get me wrong, there was a lot of conditioning there as well about being a good girl and all of those things, and don't put out, and all of those things. But actually, when I looked at my own process, I wanted sex that felt great and felt two-way, and also felt like it was just great for all the right reasons. And what I learned through my sexual experiences, that I need to feel safe. And I know that this is something that people, I think, take for granted, because they're like, yeah, obviously you need to feel safe when you're going to have sex with someone. Yeah, but actually a lot of safety goes out the window. I'm not talking about condoms or dental dams. I'm talking about, the idea of feeling like you are genuinely in a safe space to literally open yourself to someone. I think as a result of that, I have gone years with no sex. We're talking 3 years, 4 years, the last one, stretches of not having sexual intimacy with people. And it was by choice. It wasn't, no, I'm not having sex, I'm shutting myself away from the world. It was just, well, I haven't met anyone that I want to do that with, soz. And being quite unapologetic about it.
And with the sense of safety, how do you judge that? How do you decide that that's going to be there?
Well, it's a gut feeling. It's a gut reaction. So it's not to say that I haven't had sexual experiences with people that, I haven't known for that long. But I do take my time to get to know people, unless my body is saying, oh my God, you need to shag this person now. And that's very rare. But if it does happen, then I'm very forward. And I kind of say, I'm really attracted to you. Can we get to know each other? And after that period of time, and sometimes it's one date, sometimes it can be several, then I'm okay, I'm cool. Yeah, there's enough there. I know enough about you to actually, go ahead and say, come home. And also my home is something that's extremely precious to me because I'm a diaspora kid. I was born here in England, but then moved to Mauritius age 7. And then from 7 to 14 was raised in Mauritius and then came back here again. And that, being multiracial as well, it has this huge effect on the way you relate to the world, because safety becomes really, really important. And I think I wish someone had told me when I was younger, there's nothing wrong with that. It's okay to want to feel those things. It's natural to want to feel safe with someone that you want to have sex with. And that, so I suppose that really informed my choices. And when I did go ahead and have sex with people that, when I was younger, I would say, my first kind of experiences, I just felt like sex was something I had to get out of the way. I felt like it was a rite of passage. There wasn't any of this sense of embodiment. It was just like, I want to do this thing. I want to experience this thing. And as a result, it happened for me quite young. But I had no regrets around it. The people that made me feel regret were family, society, all of those things that we deal with on a daily basis. So I think there was a lot there that I needed to go away and work on to make sure that I was totally sexually free when I got, because again, it's about, if I'm going to give myself this experience, I don't want to be in my head. I want to be in my body. I want to be connected.
Some people would feel a great pressure to have sex, just simply to be able to say, I've had sex, almost to themselves, to be able to say, I'm not losing my mind, or I'm not losing my sense of attraction to other people. It is so encouraging to me to hear you be so comfortable with that, to be aware of where that comes from. And it's a really positive place, which is, I want to feel safe with somebody, I want to feel attracted to somebody, I want to listen to my body. And I know that if I do really want to have sex with somebody, my body will tell me. I think quite often people panic that because they're not getting any signs from their body, because they're not feeling attraction for others, because they're not meeting somebody that they want to have sex with, it's their fault. It's their problem. There's something wrong with them.
Well, maybe there's something I could share there. I'm in this very safe and loving relationship, and we're both people that have been through quite a lot as well. And we came into that, I'm pushing 40 now. I didn't say that. Playing age 25 to 40. Yes, thank you. Goodbye. But yeah, I came in knowing that whoever I was going to meet would probably be a bit older than me, because of the way that I see life in general. I think the way that you describe it is probably I'm a bit meta. So I needed someone that was going to be okay with that. Not everyone is. And I think in general, I had to make sure that I looked at the times where I'd felt really badly rejected. And there were a couple of times that I can think of where my partners were unable to give me what I needed, so penetrative sex was an issue for them. And these were men, because I'm queer, and I really do go, on gut feeling and the whole package. And I'm absolutely attracted to women, definitely, completely. I'm also attracted to men. The likelihood that I will end up in a relationship with a man now is very minute, just because I can't imagine going without the kitty cat for that long. I just don't know how I will survive. So things have changed, but it really is about having looked at that and gone, again, I can't describe, and this is not to put, these men that I'm talking about, obviously in a completely anonymous fashion here, were wonderful men, and they weren't uncaring or unkind in any way. It's just that for some reason, in their own evolution of things weren't working in their bodies or their minds. They weren't in the right place to give me what I needed. And that was really difficult to come to terms with as a woman, as such an embodied, practitioner as well, that as a performer as well, we're much more embodied and sensitive than other people. The rejection, which was what it felt like, which was total rejection, was just crushing. And then I had to then try and verbalize that so that my needs were met, but also to not damage their ego too much because I loved them. And so that tension was really difficult to bear in a couple of those instances. And it left me, after those relationships, feeling like if I didn't get what I needed back, I would not be able to have a fully functional sexual relationship. And so it made me really double down on, okay, what do I need? I need to be really serious about this now. What do I need? And if I do have any blocks around this, and if it is me, what could I actually look at so that I'm more sort of empowered in my choices? And if someone is in that position again, you know, and they for some reason, you know, they come to me with an issue, or sex isn't a given, if you know what I mean, which is often the case, and I don't know why people don't talk about it more, then I'm able to go, actually, this is not about me, and not take that as a personal rejection.
When you said sex is a given, do you mean as in the presumption that because you're in a relationship you will have sex? Is that what you said?
We assume that sex is an easy and natural thing for everyone. And it isn't always. That's not life, you know. for various reasons, people have come to us with you know, traumas, whether mental or physical, perhaps both, with lived experience that has left them deeply scarred, and with some kind of barriers and resistance towards certain things. And so this idea of sex, this commercial porn starry idea of sex that we're sold on a regular basis, you know, isn't real. And I don't just mean in the kind of ooh, ah, fake nails, big boobs kind of way. I mean in the way that we are full human beings, and to expect when we have sex for all of those things to just switch off is just really a bit naive when you think about it. It's like, here's the whole of me. This is my whole body that I use every day to do all of these wonderful, wonderful things. And then when I get in the bedroom, I'm going to magically relax and let all of my tensions go away. What? Who do you know that actually is capable of doing that? You know, the false assumptions just I find staggering.
I think the false assumptions around as well, what sex should look like, how regular sex should be, how much you should enjoy sex every single time you have sex, you know, all of those kinds of things. It's very it's like a caricature, right? It doesn't really allow for how completely, wildly varied different bodies will be when they come together, what that will look like, how that will feel. Absolutely.
And I think actually that I've heard, you know, I've done my research. I've listened to every other episode before me. So, it's been really interesting listening to you and your guests, you know, talking about these false assumptions and stuff. And I think when it came to me with women, my experience with women was really special, because we are no longer talking about the assumption that sex is two-way. And what sex is to women in different relationships is also different. So I feel like for me, it really, really, it forced me in a sense to double down on what my expectations of sex looked like, what my ideals were, what makes me feel amazing and what isn't so great for me. And that is something that you know, being with women taught me.
Was it a sense of there not necessarily being a rule book that you'd been fed for your whole life, so you didn't have all these preconceptions?
Sure, I think so. But I also think the act, I'm a giver. I'm a massive giver. I'm not a pillow princess at all.
What does a pillow princess mean? Is that what you lay back and allow yourself to be served?
Yes, ma'am. I like a pillow princess, but after a while it gets a bit boring. So I'm the two-way sex kind of person, and that works with men and women, but with women even more, because I enjoy the act of going down on a woman and pleasuring her so much that it turns me on. It makes me want to have more brilliant sex and chuck them around and be chucked around and be free and wild and all of those things, you know. And I told my girlfriend that I was doing this podcast, and she just burst out laughing and said, people wouldn't believe me if I told them. And I went, told them what? What are you talking about? And she said, well, you're such a freak. You're such a freak. You're so freaky. And I said, yeah, but darling, that's because I'm in love with you. Like nobody else gets that shit. You know, I really do ascribe to that kind of mentality of once you have me, you get everything, like unfiltered. And that includes the highs and the lows. I'm deeply sensitive. There are all sorts of things that come with doing this kind of work, right?
You seem such an empathetic person. Obviously, what you do in your work means you must be. And being an actor and an improviser, somebody who's really connected to other people. I do think that sexually you respond to what's coming back to you as well. You can be as free as the other person is able to accommodate. Otherwise, unless you're like somebody who is prepared to have sex at someone rather than with them, which is definitely something that does occur quite a lot, I think. But I also think sometimes it is interesting how women are allowed to be playful, how they're allowed to be kind of wild. All these words that we have that sort of sometimes carry a negative connotation, like freaky, crazy, mad, which if you're embracing that and you're celebrating that, is really fun to go there. But often, always has this history of also being a way to like really oppress women, literally lock them up. So there's a really fine line. So if you feel like you can go there with somebody and they're making the space for you to feel safe to do that, that's super lush and really liberating. And I think you discover things about yourself that you maybe didn't know were there, which is in itself really arousing because you're getting off on yourself at the same time as the other person. Do you mind if we try?
Yeah, sure.
I've definitely been affected by this idea of people just for some reason not being able to give what I needed, and in some cases that was receiving as well. You know, with women, it took me, my first proper experience was, this is going to make people laugh when they hear this. So I worked on an immersive theatre gig where I was a jazz singer in these little, you know, taverns of London Bridge or whatever. And I met one of my best friends there who's a music producer. And I also met the woman, I would say, that kind of unlocked something in me. And I then found out through the course of dating her that she'd actually been an active sex worker. She'd been an escort. Mm-hmm. And we had a really candid conversation about things. And she said, I think I could help you. And I said, cool. Okay, well, what do you mean? Because we were dating at this point. So it wasn't like I'd hired her for her services. It just so happened she was so open with her sex life. And I'd explained that for me with women, it had always been the case of I'd been giving a lot, but I'd never received because, you know, I don't know, I was on my period that month, or, you know, and I didn't feel comfortable with it, or just because that person wasn't gay enough, didn't feel gay enough in themselves to fully commit to returning the favor. And, you know, after a while of going through that, you start to question, is there something wrong with me? And, you know, oh my God, sweetie, there is nothing wrong with you. You're absolutely fine. I'm going to help you. We're going to just sort this out. Just, you know, let me fuck you. Was basically what she came out with. And it wasn't easy. It was very stop-starty at first. And I again, the safety needed to come into it and everything. But my God, did I learn that day that two-way sex in a lesbian relationship is absolutely paramount for me. And it just unlocked a bunch of stuff for me that I think I knew was there. But I'd always known that I identified as queer. Didn't have the words to say that just yet. Queer wasn't a popular term yet at that, at that time. But yeah, I guess it just ticked a bunch of boxes for me. I'd also fallen very deeply in love with a woman abroad, which again, this sense of, oh my God, I really want you, but I can't have you. Oh, we're all going to die in this Austen novel where no one can get their pants off. So it was just this prolonged sense of...
That's exactly what I imagine the characters in Austen novels to sound like. But the impression of you unlocking and all these new avenues opening up, especially when it came to reciprocal sex, this sense of everyone being involved and everyone enjoying it. The way you talk about it sounds like it could have a really powerful impact on your work. So were those two things running side by side? This idea of, okay, I'm unlocking this in my sexual life. How can I show up in my career and demand more equal relationships?
Yeah, it did. I don't think I was aware of it at the time, to be honest, but it definitely did, in that I just took less shit from everyone in general. I became so much more clear and concise in my personal space boundaries. I was suddenly unafraid to ask for what I wanted and needed, which was just so important. And I really started to own the fact that, you know, if I don't have sex for XYZ amount of time, it's because I don't wanna, and that's cool.
Oh, yes.
Last year, as I said, and this is kind of rounding up towards the deeper aspect of my practice, when I was looking at training into, you know, yoga psychology and looking at all of those things, I said, right, what have I not done that I think I actually should do? Okay, well, for a long time, society and myself, we kind of jointly decided that I was bisexual for a really long time. As a teen, I identified that way. If I were to watch porn and it was well made, I would probably really like the idea of, you know, not having to choose between dick and pussy. Yay, we like that. And the different kind of loving vibe that you can get from each partner. So I really asked, what do I want to do with that? Is there something that I still need to look at there? So I asked a couple out that I knew. I actually asked them on a date. I got a no, but I'm still really proud of the fact that I did that. I put myself out there and I just actively confronted something, because it was one of those things where it had come up in my brain in a fantasy once. And then I was like, nah, really? Really, Ariane? Are you sure? Is that what you want? I'll leave it for a bit, see if it comes back. And it came back like clockwork every time of I have this period where, you know, after my period in the beginning of my cycle, which I call dark angel time, where I'm super randy and I just need to fucking get fucked in the nicest, most loving way. And during that period, I don't make any decisions that are need to be based in ration if I feel like I'm even remotely attracted to somebody, because it just gets in the way. And I'm really aware of that now.
Yeah, don't move in, get a mortgage.
Exactly. So I just...
When the dark angel is near, sign no contracts, make no commitments.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's almost like a planetary retrograde. I'm like, no, don't even try. So I would wait for that period to pass and then have a look at it again. And again, it would just come back again and again. So I got to a point where I was like, okay, so even if nothing comes of this, I'm just going to tell them how I feel. And I did that. And they were very gracious in the way they responded. Obviously, it did change the nature of the relationship a little bit. But we're now at a point where we're actually able to, you know, have a WhatsApp or whatever and go, hey, how are you?
I love that. I love that everyone who's listening is thinking, how did it come up? How did it really change the relationship? And that is so perfectly captured by, we're now at a point where we can have the occasional WhatsApp, which suggests it massively changed. I would love to know what an orgasm feels like for you.
Now, this is something that I actually had to think about, because I listened to this question on the previous episodes and oh, fuck, actually, this is really difficult. And I'm not one that's often tongue-tied by very much. It's difficult to shut me up in most scenarios, as you know. But yeah, I thought, okay, why am I struggling with this? And I think the reason I struggle is because for me, it's such a 360-degree experience that I find it really difficult to just put it into words.
Yeah.
So the closest I could get was an image. And for me, it's like playing Catch the Wave. I don't know if you've ever played that. It's a tropical island girl thing. So what you do is you put your feet next to the shoreline on the beach and you wait for the wave to come to your feet. And then it goes back again. And then it comes back and it covers a bit more of you. And then it withdraws again. And then it comes and it finally sort of engulfs your whole foot. And then you become happy and you feel like you know where the wave is going to make you happier. And it kind of grows and then it just overwhelms you. And you allow yourself to be totally submerged in this wonderful warmth and this embrace of being loved and held and fucked to your heart's content. And it culminates in kind of like an out-of-body experience, because everything switches off and everything lights up at the same time. So I think that's how I would describe it.
That's lush. That's super lush, especially considering if it was less than an image and more a reality, I would be concerned that you'd electrocute yourself with all the lights turning on whilst you were swimming around in the sea. So that was Ariane. I'm so grateful to her for coming on the podcast and talking to us, as I am all our guests. It's a big ask and I'm always astounded by their openness and honesty. This episode was edited by Daisy Grant and the podcast is produced by me, Helen Duff. Daisy Grant and Lorna Treen. Hit us up if you want to pay brilliant women to create top quality audio content. All of our links are in the episode notes, as is anything important that we've talked about in this podcast. And of course, the Ko-fi page where you can ping us your pounds, dollars, pennies, multiple shares in Bitcoin. Mama wants that crypto, baby. Have a brilliant week. Let me know if you have any reactions to what you've heard or my massive ramble at the beginning. I really appreciate you listening to this podcast. I love making it and I love having you to make it for. I know there's so many other podcasts you could be giving your eartime to, so I really appreciate you liking and subscribing, as well as listening, obviously. Have a good week and take care of yourself.